Our protagonist had spent 1,000 years trapped in ice, only to awaken in a time completely unfamiliar to him. The government wanted to capture him and turn him into a test subject, yet the entire police force was powerless to bring the man down. That was because the protagonist could run as fast as Sonic himself, and he could even stop gunfire with the tips of his fingers. The president of the country was forced to deceive the public, claiming those incidents were nothing more than scenes from a movie production. But Luke couldn't care less about any of that. The only thing on his mind was revenge. The man responsible for ruining his life had also made it into this future after traveling through time. The problem was that his enemy had become the biggest celebrity in all of Korea. This series is seriously incredible, guys, and I really hope you enjoy it. I'm setting a goal for you all to hit, and the moment you reach it, I'll bring part 2 right away. So if you're real subscribers, drop a like and leave a comment at the start of the video. Enough wasting time, let's jump into the story. The couple was racing home at full speed, eager to enjoy the night together, when out of nowhere, some lunatic appeared sprinting faster than a bullet train. He shot past their car as if it were standing still, and left everyone behind in a cloud of dust. Nobody could understand what they were seeing as a man dashed through the streets with the speed of Sonic. The police quickly set up a blockade and finally managed to stop him. The moment one officer fired a taser, the man casually caught the electric shot between his fingertips. They unleashed the entire current on him, but the messy-haired stranger retaliated instantly, blasting everyone away just as the special forces started arriving. Helicopters, military tanks. The wanted level escalated like something straight out of GTA San Andreas. And all of this chaos was being caused by a single man wearing hospital clothes. Not only could he move at impossible speed, but he also began scaling buildings. At the top, surrounded by helicopters and soldiers stationed across nearby rooftops with guns aimed directly at him, the man ripped off his shirt, grabbed a broomstick, and challenged everyone to attack him. I know what you're thinking. What kind of man is this? This is Luke, and he does not belong to this era. 1,000 years ago, he was a warrior unlike anything the world had ever seen. He single-handedly fought 300 assassins for 4 straight days while shielding the woman he loved with his own body. In the end, he and his greatest enemy, Okan, battled to the death before plunging together off a cliff into freezing waters below. In the present day, people were stunned when they discovered a massive block of ice drifting across the ocean. Inside that frozen mass, there was a human being. And no, it wasn't Captain America. It was our protagonist, perfectly preserved after 1,000 years. The government took custody of him and attempted to turn him into a subject for countless experiments. But the man managed to escape. That's how we arrived at this moment, with everyone chasing after him. The president of South Korea, Kang Kwan, personally decided to go to the scene. He ordered the soldiers to lower their weapons and introduced himself as the nation's leader. Then he explained that they were living in the future and reached out his hand for a greeting. Luke swung the broomstick right beside the president's head, simply to test whether everything around him was real or just an illusion. The president nearly got blown away and almost lost himself in fear. Back in the past, there had been a woman named Yun, who specialized in mental attacks. Because of that, the protagonist believed he had fallen into some kind of genjutsu. Now that he realized everything was real, he gave up resisting. At the president's secret facility, they prepared a huge feast for Luke. The two spoke together, and the president explained that modern medicine had managed to safely thaw him out. In exchange for support in this new age, he requested only one thing: cooperation. The government wanted to study how the man had survived frozen for centuries and use that discovery for the benefit of humanity. The president had to fabricate a story for the public, claiming that the enormous ice block, the crazed man sprinting through the streets, and the scenes of him leaping across buildings were all part of a movie production and none of it was real. All of that was done to conceal the truth about the frozen man. Any nation in the world would commit terrible acts to obtain power like that. Since he had no interest in becoming anyone's lab rat, the protagonist simply refused and walked away. The guards tried to stop him while soldiers fired tranquilizer darts into his back, but Luke always remained one step ahead. He coated his body in a layer of aura powerful enough to prevent anything from touching him. With overwhelming power, he sent everyone around him flying through the air. The president stood there in shock, staring at that unstoppable monster. Several guards began surrounding the man, blocking every possible exit. When one of them attacked from behind, he truly believed he had landed a hit, but the protagonist suddenly turned into smoke before his eyes and slipped through the guards while dodging every strike effortlessly. The guards had no clue what had just happened, and neither did the president. Then, for reasons nobody could understand, he suddenly appeared atop the tallest building in the city. It looked as though Luke was about to jump and end his own life. That world no longer had anything left to offer him. Without a purpose, his existence felt hollow. He had lived only to protect his lady. Now there was no lady left to defend and no enemy left to fight. That was why he no longer saw any reason to keep living. He wished he had died the day he fell from that cliff all those years ago. As he began falling, something suddenly caught his attention. A face displayed on a billboard made him stop instantly. It was identical to Okan, his final enemy. Luke's eyes widened, and his mind returned to the battle against Okan, the monster who trapped his family inside an illusion and forced them to kill each other right in front of him. Manhwa and Okan joined forces to bring ruin to Goryeo. Back then, the bodyguard confronted his enemy with nothing but sheer resolve, while Okan took pleasure in tormenting him and swore he would destroy the entire world. To Luke, that man was the source of every tragedy. He was convinced he had killed him during their final battle, yet somehow that bastard appeared to still be alive in the future. That revelation completely changed the way Luke viewed everything around him. If his enemy was still alive, then the reason he kept living still existed as well. He thrust his hands toward the ground, unleashed an enormous burst of force, slowed his fall, and landed upright. There were still countless things he didn't understand, and now he was determined to uncover the entire truth. Back at the Blue House, President Kang nearly lost his mind after hearing that the ancient warrior had thrown himself off the tallest building in the area. What terrified him even more was the fact that nobody had found a body. Fortunately, they located a witness who encountered the man shortly afterward. According to that person, he only wanted information about Lyra. In this world, Lyra is an enormous name. He is one of Korea's biggest celebrities, globally recognized for his talent since he was very young. People from all over the world follow everything about him, and with his model-like appearance and natural charisma, he wins people over effortlessly. His mere presence causes company stocks to skyrocket while also strengthening Korea's image across the globe. In short, he is seen as the perfect man, something completely different from what Luke had imagined. In reality, that only makes Luke feel even more out of place, because Okian's identity now seems like the complete opposite of the man he once knew. Because of that, Luke begins to consider only two possibilities. Either this superstar merely resembles Okan, or he truly is Okan deceiving the entire world. And strangely enough, Luke wants the second possibility to be true. Desperate to meet him immediately, he asks a young boy to take him to Lyra. To any ordinary kid, that request sounds completely insane. There's no way a normal person could simply walk up to a celebrity of that level. The boy only stares at him thinking, this guy has to be crazy. Then things get even worse. Luke loses his patience and releases such overwhelming pressure that every nearby screen shatters instantly. He demands a way to find Lyra. Terrified, the boy finally explains that the celebrity traveled to another country a few years ago. Luke realizes his target is already in a different nation. And that's when the story shifts to the United States. Over there, the model is having lunch when a massive man suddenly smacks him violently across the face. The guy yells at him in English, telling him to get out. But it's all part of a movie scene, so nobody is actually fighting. The director is frustrated because Lyra's acting has been poor lately, and it's delaying production. Trying to make up for it, even with his face already swollen, Lyra asks the actor to hit the other side as well, so they can redo the scene. At that exact moment, a chandelier breaks loose from the ceiling. It crashes down without warning, and the huge actor would have been finished if it had struck him. Lyra throws himself in front of him just in time and saves his life. The staff immediately rushes over to check whether both of them are okay. Nobody expected that accident, but thankfully they both survived, and the actor escaped unharmed. Lyra wasn't as fortunate. His arm took the full impact. At the hospital, everyone is stunned to learn that he suffered those injuries just to protect someone else. People send mountains of gifts because of his heroic act, but Lyra chooses to share everything with the hospital staff instead. He also apologizes for delaying the filming, although everyone is simply relieved that his injuries weren't even worse. Then Lyra realizes the filming no longer matters that much after receiving unexpected news. Back at the Blue House, President Kang says goodbye to the others and finds the ancient warrior waiting for him. Even after seeing him walk through maximum security without the slightest difficulty, Kang still remembers the shock he felt because only 9 hours earlier, that same man had suddenly appeared inside his office out of nowhere. This time, he came to accept the cooperation proposal he had rejected before. But under one condition. He hands over a photo of Lyra and asks the president for someone trustworthy who can bring him face to face with the celebrity. Kang agrees to any demand, as long as he receives complete cooperation in return. Luke remarks that handshakes as a symbol of trust did not exist in his era, but he still accepts the president's hand anyway. In the present, Kang discovers that Luke wants to meet Lyra as quickly as possible. Despite the distance, reaching him would not be easy. Even so, they manage to arrive at the place where Lyra is staying. The model is surprised to see the president accompanied by that man. Lyra politely introduces himself while Luke remains tense, ready to find out whether that truly is Okan. Kang mentions that Lyra recently injured his arm, and Luke approaches him with his hand extended for a greeting. The celebrity becomes startled when he realizes that this is the same man who appeared in the news. The two shake hands, and Kang suggests they continue the conversation somewhere more comfortable. But another detail matters far more. Luke is crushing Lyra's hand with terrifying strength. To his surprise, he cannot sense even the slightest trace of Xiong. Lyra appears completely human. Frustrated, Luke apologizes for the sudden intrusion. Kang tells the two of them to make themselves comfortable while he heads to the bathroom, but that is only an excuse. His men are already positioned nearby, in case anything happens. Not long afterward, everyone leaves the area, leaving only the two of them seated at the table. Even with tea placed in front of him, Luke feels completely broken inside. He realizes that man merely resembles Okan, meaning he may truly be alone in this world. Then Lyra suddenly says Luke's name. She steps closer and whispers in shock after realizing he is still alive. Lyra cannot believe that the bodyguard she thought had died is standing right in front of her. Luke almost attacks immediately, releasing a menacing aura as a warning. He demands to know whether all of this was some kind of joke. So Lyra never truly existed. The entire time it was Okan hiding behind that identity. And that could only mean one thing. Okan had found a way to conceal his key. And Luke wonders how he managed to arrive in the future before him. Calmly, Okan says that killing him there would change nothing, so it would be wiser to hold back that murderous intent. He reminds Luke that he is still struggling to adapt to this world, while he himself has already fully blended into it. Luke insists on knowing how Okan ended up in the future, but he chooses to keep it a secret. Then Luke asks about the person most important to him. Did the girl he swore to protect also make it to the future? But Okan decides to toy with him. Instead of answering directly, he gives a vague response that sounds almost like a riddle. Fed up with the conversation, Luke slams his pressure onto the table, sending Okan and the chair flying backward. It becomes obvious that Okan has no intention of cooperating, so Luke decides he will uncover the truth on his own. He stares at Okan while the other man rises in the middle of the wreckage, as though he were reminiscing about the life they once shared in the past. But that last strike seems to make Okan more confident, as if he realized Luke still has not recovered all of his power. Right before the fight begins, Okan warns him about the illusion barrier surrounding them. To everyone else, it would look like nothing more than two old friends having a conversation, not a battle tearing the entire place apart. Okan makes the first move, but Luke instantly notices that something is wrong. He was not fighting the real Okan. Luke crushes a pine cone in his hand and declares that he will uncover the truth himself. He explains that even though the enemy hid the shank at first, a small amount leaked out while blocking the attack. And that alone was enough for Luke to realize this was not Okan. The fake Lyra drops the disguise and returns to her true appearance, a woman. She is impressed that he uncovered everything during their very first encounter. It is Lyra. The story returns to the final day of the rebellion. When Luke saw Lyra fall after being struck down, he was certain she had died, so seeing her alive now makes no sense to him. Lyra laughs at his confusion and explains that the real Okan now holds an important position in this world. She only used Lyra's identity because her master was occupied with other meetings, and now she can barely contain her excitement to inform Okan that Luke has returned. After testing his strength, she believes defeating him there will be easy. Then she creates clones and orders all of them to attack simultaneously. A massive mistake. Luke destroys one of them effortlessly. He has already lost patience with all the talking and tells her to shut up. Even so, he has been spending a huge amount of Xiank, and since he awakened only recently, that should have weakened him. But that is exactly where Lyra is mistaken. Luke is not normal. With a single strike, he wipes out every one of her clones. Now she is lying on the ground, completely unable to oppose him. Luke remembers killing her back then. She fell from a cliff with a wound no one could possibly survive, which is why seeing her there now feels unbelievable. Lyra admits that she also believed she would die during that day. But when she opened her eyes, she was already in the future. In that place, a gray-haired man wearing a suit was waiting for her. It was Okan, already helping her adjust to this new world. That means Okian awakened before the others. And as his subordinate, Lyra refuses to give up. She nearly pierces Luke's eye with a sharp attack, but he blocks it in time and throws her away. Lyra can barely continue fighting while Luke walks toward her and says it is ridiculous for her to believe Okan saved her life. She claims she has only been in this world for a month, but Luke notices something else entirely. When did her body begin rotting? She has no answer. Then he tears her clothes apart and reveals the decayed flesh hidden underneath. Luke explains that Okan never actually saved her life. He merely used a spell to keep her alive for a little longer. The moment she stops being useful, she will die anyway. Lyra loses control after hearing that and screams that he is talking nonsense. Luke knows she has never heard of this technique before, but to him, the truth is obvious. She is nothing more than another tool for Okan to use. He even says that she receives such insignificant assignments because that is all she is worth to him. Those words hit Lyra hard. She becomes horrified after realizing she may die very soon. But Luke says there is only one way for her to survive, and only he knows that method. To save her, he must use another kind of Xiank, and he proves it by sending his own ki into her body, slowing the decay. That confirms everything for Lyra. Her master intended to discard her from the very beginning. Luke explains that only he and Okan are capable of using this technique. Now she has to choose a side. Unable to see any other option, Lyra silently admits that she wants to live, and asks Luke for orders. He tells her to become a double agent. The very next moment, Lyra bursts through the door screaming for someone to save her from Luke. She warns the president that they need to leave immediately, leaving everyone completely confused. The president panics at the thought of a dangerous man being inside and wonders what happened. When they enter the room, they find Luke standing inside a place that has been completely destroyed. He apologizes for the damage and says he will repay everything however he can. His excuse is that he was simply testing something. The president ignores that and asks whether Luke is mentally stable. They also show concern for Lyra and ask if she was hurt. While Lyra grows irritated watching Luke act that way in front of everyone, his performance is genuinely convincing. Even so, he intends to speak with Lyra again soon to decide what should be done about Okan. Then the story returns to the past, when the young swordsman learned what his only duty truly was. He was meant to wield his blade to protect the people who mattered to him. A bodyguard had to defend those individuals even if it meant sacrificing his own life. From an early age, he was taught that his life held less value than the person he served. But precisely because they lived for others, bodyguards possessed unshakable determination and refused to die easily. Luke wakes up inside the laboratory, and the researchers immediately go on alert after noticing that his condition suddenly worsened. He says he feels fine and asks how much longer the research will continue, but the president tells him to rest and continue another day if necessary. Luke agrees to pause the tests for now because he has an important promise to fulfill. In the next scene, Lyra meets with Luke and comments that he took longer than expected. She notices someone following him but loses interest after realizing it is only one of the president's men. The two sit down to talk over a meal, although Lyra is surprised by how casually he orders so many drinks and charges everything to her account. Luke tells her to stay quiet. He is the one asking questions. He begins by talking about Okan's past and how he was deceived during their final confrontation. Okan was part of the family, the same family Luke was assigned to protect. Everyone believed he had died in an incident, but the entire thing had been staged to prepare for the rebellion. Lyra says that Okan always kept secrets and that she merely followed his commands. Since she cannot explain much more than that, Luke asks whether anyone else from the past made it into the future. As far as she knows, only Lyra, Okan, and Luke ended up there. She even searched through records looking for other people but found nothing. Then Luke discovers that Okan is currently outside the country. Lyra absolutely hates the idea of him confronting Okan in his current condition, especially because Okan has become far stronger than before. Suddenly, Luke cuts off the conversation not out of boredom, but because he sees something that leaves him stunned. The real Lyra, or rather, the real Okan, is standing outside the restaurant staring directly at them. A smile appears on Okan's face as he realizes everything has suddenly become far more interesting. Luke stands up and says that this meeting no longer has any purpose. Then he declares that her role from now on will have to follow stricter rules. After seeing that man with his own eyes, something important awakens inside Luke. He had become so consumed by revenge that he forgot what mattered most. Then he tells Lyra that he is certain the girl he swore to protect is still alive. To Lyra, that sounds impossible after all the records she already investigated. But the words of his former master continue echoing in his mind. His only duty was to protect the person entrusted to his care. That is why, before anything else, he is going to find his lady. Lyra warns him that it will not be easy when he cannot even remember her face. But this guy is different, because he grabs a pencil and begins sketching her from memory, recreating every detail. After spending his entire life by her side, he believes it should be easy enough to at least show a drawing. And yes, it turned out terrible. The story then shifts to Soon, whose friend is annoyed because she disappeared without saying anything. She is also the same girl from the beginning who wanted to end her own life. At school, Soon is practically treated like a celebrity. She even has a fan club full of losers who genuinely believe they have a chance with her. Because of those weirdos, her friend is constantly worried. At the same time, she also feels slightly jealous of all the attention Soon receives. While the two girls are talking, Luke and Lyra observe them from a distance. Lyra is still amazed by smartphones, calling them a massive ocean of information. Luke feels satisfied after realizing they are making progress. He believed it would take at least a year for them to get this far. Then he tells Lyra to remain quiet, since they are only there to observe. Suddenly, a group of creepy guys surrounds the girls. They are desperate for Soon's attention, and even demand a hug, acting as though she owes them some kind of reward. The way they approach leaves Soon terrified, while the two idiots behave as if being fans gives them rights over her. Luke and Lyra watch everything from afar and realize they will soon need to interfere. And this is where we learn more about his lady. The first word he uses to describe her is dandelion, because of how pure she was. She was small, fragile, and cried all the time. Even though she came from a wealthy family, every illness she caught became serious. She was the kind of person who needed someone beside her to stay safe. Luke steps in the moment one of the men tries to grab Soon. Lyra keeps an eye on her friend. And if you thought Soon was Luke's lady, she is not. The real person is her friend, and she was never weak. Not in the past, and not now. She was his master. Luke walks toward her, and the girl moves straight toward him. He apologizes for arriving too late to protect her, and offers her his coat because of the cold. After just one glance, Luke is certain it is her. But to his complete shock, the girl suddenly drives a punch straight into his stomach. Luke definitely was not expecting that, and neither was I. She is not some helpless victim. She is dangerous. Smiling, she remarks that it has been a very long time. The truth is, she thought he was just another fan. That realization tears Luke apart inside, because she does not remember him. She is not even using the same name anymore. Confused, the girl asks whether he is one of Soon's fans. Luke is shaken because it is not only her memories that have changed. Her personality has changed completely as well. The person standing before him feels like someone entirely different. Then the girl lowers her head, embarrassed that she punched him for no reason. Some classmates rush over to protect Soon and her friend, believing Luke had been bothering them. But at that moment, he does not care about any of it. All he can think about is the painful truth that this girl is not his master. The others leave together with Soon, but the girl keeps thinking about the man who stood there with such sorrowful eyes. Even during that brief encounter, she could tell he had gone through something terrible. The following morning, Luke and Lyra visit the grave where his lady was supposedly buried. Lyra thinks the place looks far too modest, though she assumes that is because so much time has passed. They also confirm everything with the president's chief historian. After examining countless records, they discover that Luke's lady died during the day of the rebellion. Her final belongings were placed inside that grave. Lyra remains calm, but Luke is completely shattered. He even punches the ground out of frustration. Those final moments keep replaying endlessly inside his mind. Okan defeated him by pulling him away from the only mission that truly mattered. He broke the rule that guided his entire life, and failed the very purpose for which he existed. Standing in front of her grave, he is crushed by guilt for failing his lady. It is cruel to dedicate an entire life to a single mission only to discover in the end that it all seemed meaningless. Now that her death has been confirmed, they begin focusing on the girl from before, the one who shares the same face as his former master. Back at school, the girl is surprised to realize she is the only employee left. Her drunken boss is collapsed in the corner, looking completely miserable. The lazy man even tells her to make instant noodles for him, as though that were somehow part of her job too. She complains angrily about being treated like a maid when she should be becoming famous instead. Tired of hearing her complain, he finally gets up to cook for himself. Her interview is playing on television, and he tells her to endure things just a little longer. Then the phone rings, and his mood changes immediately. After the call ends, he shares the good news with Mariel. He managed to arrange a meeting for a drama with an important production company. Mariel's eyes instantly light up. That could be the opportunity she has been waiting for all this time. Since they were invited, Mariel goes to the meeting, but the place immediately makes her uncomfortable because it does not seem appropriate for a girl her age. Even so, she tries to ignore the feeling, convincing herself that it might simply be the company's atmosphere. Then the men there offer her alcohol, catching her completely off guard. She reminds them that she is still underage and cannot drink. The environment definitely does not feel like an interview. The place is messy and unprofessional, and the two men behave in a strange drunken manner. They tell her to relax, saying this is only a preliminary meeting and not the real interview. She tries to continue acting normally, but the instant one of those disgusting men places a hand on her, she realizes she is in danger. At that moment, she understands exactly where this is heading, so she stands up and declares that she would never sell her body, not even for an entire building. But it makes no difference, because shortly afterward she collapses after being drugged through the water she drank. Lying on the floor without the strength to move, she realizes she has been deceived. They put something in her drink. As for Shadok, he has fallen into such pathetic desperation that he would do absolutely anything at this point. With Mariel unconscious, one of the men comments that they should take advantage of her dream for their own benefit. Then their leader calls, and they report that everything is going perfectly. Back at President Kang's residence, Luke gazes at the moon and says that only one thing remains for him now: revenge. He intends to destroy everything Okan has built and tear it all down until the two of them truly die this time. Late that night, Lyra suddenly appears and catches him off guard. We also discover that he has been giving her his key every single day. She came because she found something important. And it is not about Okan, but about the girl who resembled his former master. After becoming curious about Mariel, Lyra started investigating her past. What she uncovered is shocking. Just like Luke's lady, the girl belongs to the Min family and is a direct descendant of the person he failed to protect. After following the girl for some time, Lyra discovers that she is in danger and needs help. Even so, Luke does not care about some mere descendant. He simply turns around and walks back into the building because, to him, she is not his master. Lyra becomes irritated after all the effort she went through to find the girl. Then an unexpected phone call comes in, and she realizes she has to act quickly. Part of her thinks Luke should simply abandon the girl if he truly feels nothing for her. Sitting there in silence, the broken man recalls the most important person in his life. He remembers every expression she ever made up until the day when the rebellion began. When he realized danger was closing in on his lady, he begged her to run away. But before leaving, she made one final request. She wanted him to remain by her side whenever she looked back. That memory overlaps with the image of Mariel inside his mind, leaving him torn apart. He keeps repeating to himself that that girl is not his master. Mariel should have no connection to him, so why should he care? Besides, he believes someone else is probably already protecting her. Then the story shifts to the next moment on this YouTube channel, where Nami accepts Shadiok as the company's new manager candidate. To Shadiok's surprise, he lands the job on his very first day without even needing an interview. Nami does not care that he is inexperienced and simply tells him to start working. Then he remembers that, after Mariel, Shadok is the only employee left there. He also prepared a surprise for her and becomes curious about how the meeting went. Then he receives a phone call, and the white-haired man instantly loses his composure. He had stepped away for only a minute, but while he was in the bathroom, everything went wrong and the target escaped. That idiot subordinate tried to touch her and ended up getting beaten badly. Now that she escaped, if she reports everything to the police, they are finished. Even so, the bowl-cut man insists she could not have gone far because the drug is still affecting her. And he is right. Mariel can barely walk and has to support herself against the wall just to keep moving. To make matters worse, she left her phone inside the room, so calling the police is not even an option. She can hardly understand where she is in that hallway while the men chase after her. She begs her own legs to keep moving, knowing that this is her only chance to survive. The instant her hand touches the doorknob, the men catch up to her and throw her backward. The bowl-cut guy wants to hurt her, but she already looks completely broken. Even they are surprised she managed to endure for so long. Without giving it further thought, they decide to drag her back. Then the ground suddenly begins to shake, and moments later the entire building starts trembling. Realizing it is a powerful earthquake, Mariel sees an opportunity. The lights go out, and in the middle of the darkness, she notices the door has opened as well. That is because our protagonist is already inside the building. Back at the president's residence, he found a note from Kondosha, and still cannot understand why he came there to save her. He could have simply ignored the girl, so even now he cannot explain why he showed up. In the end, Luke decides the simplest answer is that he wanted to do something good. Coldly, he orders the men to release the girl immediately. The white-haired man freezes in fear, unable to understand where Luke came from. Meanwhile, the ground continues shaking, but Luke effortlessly throws him aside, sending the man crashing into several objects before hitting the floor. The next target is the bowl-cut thug, and with a deadly glare, Luke commands him to let the girl go. Even he does not understand why he is so angry. The delinquent runs away the moment he sees the condition of the other man. He rushes straight to the car and tries to escape, but Luke blocks his path. Luke reminds the coward that he never gave him permission to leave. The man crawls out of the vehicle, while Luke demands to know what they used to make the girl lose consciousness. He even considers killing him if he refuses to answer. Once again, he asks whether they poisoned the girl, and moments later shoves the car using nothing but his aura. Luke wants the antidote. Panicking, the man stammers that she was only drugged and should wake up soon. Luke does not believe him and crushes his hand. Then he warns that if he is lying, the next thing he crushes will be his neck. The bowl-cut man is still trying to process the situation when a group dressed like government agents appears to interrupt everything. In reality, they are a private security team. The men tell the criminal to run while Luke checks on the girl, but their leader states that they intend to take the girl into their custody. They do not even introduce themselves. They simply order Luke to hand over the girl or prepare to face force. Luke was already expecting that and tells them to go ahead and try. Remembering their first meeting and how he ended up saving her, Luke decides he must take responsibility for the girl. Then he claims to be her manager, even though that arrangement only began a single day ago. The bowl-cut delinquent calls the boss and discovers that he was the one who sent the bodyguards to take control of the situation if anything went wrong. But when he mentions that they found Mariel's manager, even the boss is shocked. Back with Luke and the security guards, they demand proof that he truly has a connection to the girl. In response, Luke says they first need to prove they are trustworthy before they can take Mariel. To him, those men look far too suspicious to trust. One of them tries to act, but Luke drives a kick into his stomach and follows it with a palm strike that sends him flying away. After taking him down, Luke even wonders whether he may have overdone it slightly. The leader stops pretending to be polite and orders everyone to attack at once. It does not help them at all. Luke tears through every single one of them with rapid blows until he is the only one still standing. As he walks past the bodies scattered across the floor, Luke senses something unexpected. The group's leader decides to face him personally. And finally, the girl wakes up. She does not recognize any of those security men, so Luke asks her to close her eyes for a moment while he gathers energy for a massive attack. In a single instant, the entire team is blasted away and knocked down like bowling pins by the explosion of Luke's power. The girl is left speechless. The only thing she manages to say is that he is unbelievably strong. In the following scene, she is finally safe beside the boss, who realizes the enormous mistake he made by sending her alone without any protection. He never imagined something like this could happen and ended up getting deceived simply because the company had a famous name. Even though Mariel looks fine on the surface, it is obvious that the incident deeply shook her. What seemed like a huge opportunity could have ended horribly for her. Her boss becomes furious and wants to go after the people responsible, but she immediately shuts down that reckless idea. There is no way he could stand against a massive company. She also wants to expose everything, but the truth is that the two of them are still far too weak. No matter how much they protested, they would end up losing. That is why she does not want him starting a pointless fight. Mariel would rather make those men pay little by little in the future. For now, she says the most important thing is thanking the person who helped them. Then she drags her boss over to the uninterested Luke and lets the two speak. The man wants to reward him, but Luke seems interested only in sweet drinks. The girl already likes him a lot because she thinks he is unbelievably strong and believes he would be the perfect manager. Since they have already met before, she jokingly asks whether the girl he mistook her for was as pretty as she is. On top of that, the boss practically turns the conversation into an interview and discovers that Luke is almost unemployed. Mariel is shocked by the direction things are taking, but from the boss's perspective, the two would make the perfect team. So he offers Luke the position of manager right there on the spot. Later at school, Soon congratulates Mariel for getting into a major production company. Without revealing what truly happened that night, Mariel explains that everything ended badly. Feeling dizzy, she steps aside and secretly asks for a favor, wanting to learn a few tricks about the entertainment industry. That private request makes Soon hesitate slightly, but she is far too kind to refuse help and immediately agrees. She is just about to answer when a group of delinquent girls appears, shoving the two aside. That is Guy and Neil's group, but Soon's personal managers alone are enough to intimidate every one of them. Before things escalate, Soon comments that moments like this are exactly why having managers around is important. To her, choosing someone trustworthy matters far more than choosing someone strong. The moment she hears the word trustworthy, Mariel immediately thinks about the man she just met. That night, Luke watches over the city from above when Lyra arrives to meet him. He is unusually harsh with her, complaining that she is always late and asking what kind of routine makes her take so long. Lyra ignores the question and asks why he called for her. Luke simply asks what exactly a celebrity manager does, and even she is surprised by that question. Under his intimidating stare, Lyra explains that a manager stays beside the celebrity, handles contracts, and protects them like a guardian. After answering, she asks why he wanted to know that. Luke then reveals that he got a new job as Mariel's manager. That leaves Lyra completely stunned, especially after he rejected the idea during the previous day. She even curses at Luke for changing his mind, and says she already knew this would happen eventually. On top of that, he ends up discovering something interesting because of her. Meanwhile, one of the members of the emergency team reports to the leader about the mysterious man, and admits that the mission failed because of him. At the same time, Luke tells Lyra how he fought several men while rescuing the girl. From the very beginning, he realized those men were different. Even after taking heavy blows, they kept getting back up. Back with the team leader, he throws a punch so powerful that it sends the commander crashing into the wall, reminding everyone that they are not ordinary humans either. Failing that mission is an enormous humiliation, especially considering how important it was. Luke comments to Lyra that the people of this world should not know about Jiank. This was supposed to be a world without martial arts. And yet, he sensed Jiank within those men. The emergency team leader also becomes interested and decides he wants to meet this mysterious man personally. Lyra reacts strongly after hearing that. She asks if he is being serious, while Luke cannot understand why she became so shaken. Then he begins suspecting that she knows something he does not. Luke's eyes widen. She freezes after remembering that Okan once claimed the inner Shinnok had disappeared. If that was true, then what Luke sensed should have been impossible, which only proves further that Okan had been using her. That thought brings Lyra back to the meeting she had with the present-day Okan. At that time, she discovered that the world had completely changed over those 800 years. Humanity lost one of the body's most basic functions. Now it had become a world where technology evolved in place of martial arts. Okan even praised the power of science. To him, Shiank was no longer necessary in a world like this. But that only makes it even stranger that Lyra survived for so long. Luke adds that what he sensed did not feel like ordinary Shiank, so perhaps he is still mistaken. That is why he wants to investigate those men first. Then he jumps off the building right in front of her. Luke lands heavily on the ground and walks off to uncover the truth while hiding within the shadows. In the following day, the story moves to the best school in Korea. Young receives government support and functions almost like a university, offering multiple programs and courses. And that is exactly where Mariel studies. The place is filled with spoiled rich kids, like those 3 bully girls. Unlike them, Mariel only got in through sheer luck. Because of that, she suffers bullying simply for attending that school. The girls even drag Soon into their mockery, acting as though Mariel does not deserve anyone's attention. Mariel answers Soon, but even though she wants to lash out at them, the boys in the class only pile on even more insults. The entire classroom turns against her, leaving her with no escape at all. Even so, everyone keeps talking about the new transfer student arriving that day. The teacher walks into the classroom and tells everyone to sit down. Since the teacher has extremely high standards, everyone assumes it will be a girl. But to everyone's shock, especially the girls, the person who appears is Luke, looking absurdly handsome in the school uniform. Now let's go back a little to his conversation with the president. Luke requested permission to enter the school, saying he wanted to learn more about this new world. The president handed the matter over to the director of the National Intelligence Service. As long as his age was not an issue, he could be enrolled. And that is how he ends up joining the class, instantly catching the attention of every girl there. Even the boys keep staring, thinking he looks like an actor or some future celebrity. Mariel interrupts all the excitement, introduces herself, and comments on Luke's physique. The answer she gets is unbelievably cold. Luke says he built that body by tearing people's heads off. In other words, by killing people. And the nerdy boy who told him about Lyra earlier is also in that same class. The kid practically starts shaking while Junho laughs at Luke, saying he looks like an anime character. The poor boy becomes terrified, thinking Luke might actually destroy the entire school. Luke glances around and notices Mariel. She signals for them to talk outside, so he follows her as she asks why he is studying there. She cannot believe he got in so easily and wants to know who he really is. But before entering that school, Luke received orders not to reveal his true identity. He was trained for questions like that, so he answers exactly the way he was taught. Luke says he entered through a special admission program and that he is also her manager, basically a bodyguard. Since dangerous people are after her, he intends to stay close and protect the celebrity. That makes Mariel uncomfortable. She asks him not to say things like that at school, or both of them will end up in trouble, adding that they should act like strangers there. Part of her still refuses to accept reality, because she does not see herself as a real celebrity yet. Mariel becomes completely flustered, but Luke vanishes like Batman. Somewhere else, a group of bullies is extorting a nerdy student for his lunch money. The boy refuses to hand it over, so he gets punched hard in the stomach for disobeying. The blow drops him instantly. General rules over the class like an actual tyrant, and everyone around him is afraid. As Luke approaches, he starts wondering what is going on. The reason he disappeared earlier was simple. He sensed traces of chi nearby. Now Junho forces the boy to stay on his knees while taking his money. The weaker student explains that Junho collects fees from everyone there. Backed by his powerful family, he treats the entire class as if it belongs to him. The word that best describes Junho is king, and that immediately irritates Luke. He feels disgusted that someone so pathetic would call himself that. But Junho and his lackeys hear every word. Luke then calmly apologizes for insulting the king. Junho takes that as a challenge to his authority. One of the lackeys thinks he alone is enough to deal with Luke. Junho shoves the guy aside and personally steps forward, bringing his face close to Luke's while daring him to attack. Terrible decision. Die. Furious because Luke continues standing firm, Junho prepares his fist. The weak boy cannot believe this is happening on the transfer student's very first day. Right before the fight can begin, the teacher appears and ruins Junho's fun. He tells them to settle those kinds of issues outside the school. Junho warns that Luke's life will become hell from now on. He talks as if he plans to completely destroy the boy. Luke only reacts with confusion. Later during lunch, Luke asks to sit with a group of students. To his surprise, everyone stands up and leaves. Nobody wants to be associated with him and end up targeted by Junho, so the table becomes empty. The weak boy asks if he can sit there instead. The two start eating together, and Luke questions why everyone fears Junho so much. He genuinely cannot understand it. The boy explains that Junho and his gang have already marked Luke as a target, so school is about to become a nightmare for him. Junho pressures people until they have no choice but to leave the school. That is why everyone avoids Luke. But the boy also asks why Luke did not crush Junho immediately, since he clearly had the power to do it. Then he recalls their first encounter. The boy comments that Luke already seemed strange back then, and jokingly asks if he is some superhuman from another era, getting dangerously close to the truth. Before they can continue talking, a teacher calls for the new transfer student. Inside a separate room, the teacher asks Luke a few simple questions. Luke notices that the teachers there are not very helpful and do not live by strong values like the people from the past did. But he already knows the real reason he was summoned there. So he tells Lyra to stop pretending. She immediately drops the act and is shocked when she hears that he sensed traces of Shionk inside the school. Unfortunately, neither of them knows who that Shionk belongs to. That is exactly why Luke caused trouble on purpose. He wanted to force someone into using chi. It was the perfect opportunity, but the teacher interrupted everything. Even so, he confirmed one thing. Martial Shionk still exists in that world. At the same time, Junho beats up the weak boy, which makes the moment when Luke finally strikes back even better. Junho orders the boy to take off his shirt and fight back, but the kid only lightly taps his shoulder. He is completely terrified. Junho mocks the boy's frightened expression before landing a blow so brutal it sends tremors through his entire body. The thugs watch their leader toy with his latest victim, and remember seeing Luke talking with Junho at the cafe. That's exactly why the boy is being punished. At that pace, Junho would soon force him to even take off his pants. Then the glasses-wearing student from earlier suddenly rushes in to stop the situation. He's the class president, and after speaking with Mariel, he finally decides to step in. Mariel had been disappointed because he kept bowing his head to the bullies. All this time he had stayed quiet to protect his future and preserve his peaceful life. But he decided he would no longer remain silent. So he charges at Junho as though he truly intends to bring him down. But Luke steps in front of him and blocks his path. That confirms something important for Luke. Then Luke tears Junho apart with his words, saying he's nothing but a bastard and nowhere near worthy of being called a king. The insult drives Junho's men to attack the transfer student. Luke recalls the conversation he had with the class president. He had been ordered not to cause trouble, and he gave his word. That's why he stays still without doing anything. He also remembers what Junho said earlier. Luke had asked why he would involve himself with someone already labeled as trouble. Junho answered with a simple truth. The strong are meant to protect the weak. That's exactly what makes that moment so fascinating. Even the boy who appears weak shows strength in that situation, helping Luke with the thing he struggles with most, adapting. Back in the fight, one of Junho's lackeys injures his own hand trying to hit Luke. The very next second, Luke spins the guy around and slams him violently onto the floor. That also makes him realize that even his former self had weaknesses. The entire classroom is left stunned. He took down two guys almost instantly. Then Luke stares directly at the coward Junho and asks if the so-called king is finally going to prove what he can do. Junho grows tense and completely loses control. Like a madman, he rushes forward with a punch. But all that swagger means nothing, because Luke simply flicks his forehead and sends him flying away. Luke doesn't even bother looking at him afterward, and still calls the boy pathetic. It was humiliation and a beating at the same time. Junho collapses onto the floor with a huge lump swelling on his forehead. Luke has already realized that guy doesn't deserve to be called a king. If anyone deserves that title, it's the class president. As he reflects on everything, Luke realizes the class president is hiding an absurd amount of power. Park Minguk is exactly the person they had been searching for. He is the source of those martial Shionk traits. Staring intently at the new transfer student, Park Minguk asks what Luke is hiding. The other students have no clue what the two of them are talking about, but to everyone there, it's obvious that Luke has gotten himself into another problem. Then Mariel arrives and finds Junho and his entire gang sprawled across the floor. She has no idea what happened and notices the class president talking with Luke. Luke glances at her for a brief moment, meets her eyes, and simply walks past her. After class, Soon and Mariel talk about how strange it is for someone like him to end up at that school. Even so, with a guy like that around, Junho now looks like a complete joke. But Luke still intends to conquer that world once again. Soon comments that Luke gives off a different kind of feeling. It's as if he naturally makes people feel safe around him. And she ends up realizing that hiding the truth won't work much longer. So Mariel tells her everything, leaving Soon completely shaken, and she promises to keep the secret. Mariel feels relieved that she confessed early. It also helps that her new manager has absolutely no experience, just like the future star herself. In a strange way, the two of them end up fitting together. Soon admits that, while Luke remembers his conversation with the class president, Park Minguk refused to answer anything until Luke mentioned Kong. Even then, Park Minguk looked completely confused. That confirmed one thing. He was attacking like an ordinary person, completely unaware of the monstrous power hidden within his own blows. The strange questions made Park Min-guk uneasy, and the conversation ended there. Luke keeps thinking about the energy behind that strike because it somehow feels familiar. Anyway, Luke eventually gets called out for causing trouble on his very first day. The school even demands the presence of his guardian. Luke responds by calling the instructor disgraceful, and at that moment, his supposed guardians arrive. It's the director of the National Intelligence Service along with his men. Imagine showing up to a school meeting with the head of national intelligence acting as your representative. Since the school receives government support, it becomes obvious they were far from pleased with how the situation had been handled. The director tells Luke to leave the rest to him, which only makes the instructor even more nervous. And just like that, the matter is settled. Afterward, our favorite troublemaker shows up once again. She brought exactly what Luke requested, a file containing Park Min-guk's records and all his personal information. From what she found, Park Min-guk seems like an ordinary boy. If there's anything unusual about him, it's only the fact that he takes his studies extremely seriously and that Xiang connection tied to not having parents. He only has an older brother. This case turns out to be far more complicated than Luke expected. So he begins suspecting that the class president is connected to the security team. That also suggests Kong had practically vanished during that era. Even while searching for evidence, he still can't uncover what exactly they are hiding. Later on, Park Min-guk returns home and finds his brother, who asks whether something happened at school. At first, Park Min-guk ignores him and keeps walking. Then he finally mentions that he saw someone using Xiang at school. It was a transfer student who defeated the bullies with that same power. Even worse, the boy also knows about their abilities. His brother asks what that person looks like. So Park Min-guk describes Luke as a tall man with long hair. And to his shock, his brother vanishes right in front of his eyes. Immediately afterward, he reports to the boss that he found the person they had been searching for. And somehow, the target is nothing more than a high school student. The boss remains furious over the failure of the previous mission, especially because Park Min-guk's brother wasn't there to ensure success. Because of that, Section Chief Kim receives the assignment this time, something he had wanted for a very long while. And yes, this is Park Danny, the same man who beat his own security team for losing to Luke. After taking control of the school, Luke returns all the money Junho had been collecting as class fees. Meanwhile, the humiliated Junho starts wondering if the class president is backing that guy, because there's no other explanation for someone acting with such confidence. That would make Luke the school's new king, and everyone begins talking about him. After class, Junho says that Luke's mere presence already made the school feel normal again. Junho eagerly offers to help with anything Luke might need from now on. But Luke notices Park Min-guk farther ahead and says he'll get his answers directly from him. Park Min-guk starts explaining how to separate trash properly while Luke thinks the whole routine is pointless. And the class president continues trying to figure out who that transfer student really is, especially since his brother disappeared right after their last conversation. Park Min-guk begins suspecting that Luke is intentionally trying to get close to him, but then Luke says he can uncover the rest on his own. From the way he speaks, it feels like a fight could break out at any moment. Min-guk immediately goes on guard, and when Luke places a hand on his shoulder, he's already preparing to strike. Then he realizes it was only Mariel catching up to them. She also starts becoming suspicious of those private conversations. So they cover it up by claiming Park Min-guk was simply teaching how to separate trash. Mariel jokes that it's funny how all three of them entered through special admission and says the two of them should become friends, since they don't really have many people they can rely on. Later, Luke and Mariel meet with the company boss. He suddenly called them in to offer a huge opportunity. The man looks completely stressed while explaining that a job came up for them. An acquaintance of his is producing a web drama, and since they need a student character, Mariel would be perfect for the role. The problem is that the filming location is far away, so the manager will have to drive. And of course, Luke has absolutely no idea how to do that. When they hand him the keys, he becomes completely lost, which ends up being hilarious. Mariel tells the boss that Luke has already become fairly famous at school, which apparently is a problem since they still haven't signed an official contract. Then Mariel says they should leave immediately, and the boss hands over a card to cover expenses. Mariel instantly starts having fun and completely ignores the warning about spending carefully. She even reminds Luke that he has no right to complain after eating 5 loaves of bread by himself. Then he changes the subject and comments that she seems close to Park Min-guk, and Mariel confirms they've known each other since middle school because they both entered through the same special admission system. That program was aimed at students struggling financially, but even though they managed to get in because of it, they also ended up trapped in a miserable routine inside the school. Even so, the class president remained determined, inspired by his older brother, who works in security. Mariel gets slightly annoyed because Luke keeps asking about Park Min-guk instead of paying attention to her. Luke turns his face away as though he's dozing off, but in reality, his thoughts are stuck on the word security. When they arrive at the filming location, Luke discovers that Mariel doesn't want him following her around because he would attract too much attention. Because of that, she tells him to stay resting inside the crew bus. Luke agrees without arguing, sits down quietly, and begins reflecting on the security men he fought before. That confirms to him that Park Min-guk lied. And his brother Park Danny also seems suspicious. Then, at that exact moment, the same group of men in suits appears near the bus. Luke is pleased because he'll finally have a chance to meet Park Danny. He warns them that he has no intention of hurting them if they answer a few questions. The first question is about who they are really chasing. Since nobody answers, he moves on to the second question and asks about the so-called experiment. But the team leader decides to attack first. The man throws a punch, and Luke catches the strike without even standing up from the seat. But that was exactly what the attacker wanted, because he releases an enormous amount of shonk and unleashes a powerful strike inside that cramped space. Even his own subordinates believe Luke might die right there. The leader tries to continue the assault, but Luke violently hurls him aside, leaving the man unconscious on the floor. Luke grabs an improvised weapon, concluding that it would be more useful than fighting with only his fists. The others begin taking off their jackets as if that would actually help them. When the first one charges in, Luke realizes their shonk only appears under specific conditions. So while defeating each of them, he also compares that strength to Park Min-guk's. But compared to the true shonk he knew in the past, it all feels like nothing more than a weak imitation. Because of that, he defeats every one of them effortlessly. After taking down the entire group, Luke arranges the men across the bus seats as though they were simply asleep. Their shonk was weak, but the man who appears next is clearly on a different level. Luke steps out of the bus and faces a refined-looking man dressed in a black suit. Park Danny is far from pleased. His entire team was defeated in less than a minute. Luke directly asks if he is Park Danny. Then he makes an outrageous claim. He declares himself to be the ancestor of the Park family. The moment he hears that, Park Danny bursts into uncontrollable laughter. To him, it sounds completely insane. Luke then brings up his younger brother, Park Min-guk, and Park Danny immediately tries to crush his head with a metal pipe. Only after attacking does he ask who Luke really is. Luke grabs the pipe and asks whether Park Danny truly wants to know the truth that badly, since both of them are searching for the same answer. The two decide to settle things somewhere else, so they head to an empty park. Once they arrive, Park Danny finally starts taking the situation seriously, and releases an enormous wave of chi. He wants answers but makes it clear he will only listen to Luke if he can defeat him first. Both of them seek the truth, so the winner takes everything while the loser will be forced to talk. Tired of being looked down on, Park Danny attacks first. The strike lands on Luke and sends him sliding backward. Park Danny is surprised because Luke kept up with his speed and even acknowledges it, but he still isn't finished. Using the walls for support, he leaps upward and comes down with a devastating aerial kick, only to realize his opponent is reading every single movement. For the first time, he begins suspecting he is facing someone far beyond ordinary. Even without knowing who Luke really is, Park Danny already senses that this man may be stronger than him. Realizing he can no longer hold back, Park Danny releases all of his shonk. Then he assumes a stance that leaves Luke stunned. It is the silent tiger fist technique. Even while blocking, Luke feels the overwhelming pressure generated by the strike. Right after that comes the second attack. Park Danny appears again at incredible speed and attempts to land a third blow. Luke dodges, but the pressure from the technique alone destroys trees around the park. Entering the fourth stage of the sequence, Park Danny tries to end everything with the final decisive strike. But the moment he attacks, Luke disappears. The silent tiger fist requires one essential element to function perfectly, and Luke demonstrates exactly what is missing. Complete silence, concealing his presence like a predator stalking its prey. He points out how imperfectly Park Danny uses Gyeonk and proves he could have ended the fight instantly. Just the opening movement of Luke's counterattack sends Park Danny flying and cracks the ground from the impact. At that moment, the gap between the two became obvious. Then Luke reveals he hadn't even used the full sequence of the technique. Later, Mariel is shocked to discover they'll be returning in a private car instead of the crew bus. She has absolutely no idea what happened. The following morning, Luke wakes Park Danny with a slap. Now they are at the brothers' house, but Park Min-guk still hasn't returned. Park Danny can't even remember when he lost consciousness, but he still intends to keep his promise and answer whatever is asked. Luke says he already managed to figure out several things on his own. The first is that Park Danny's body does not naturally possess Gyeonk. That made Luke question where the power was coming from until he found something inside the house. A stash of pills. They are not identical to the ones from the past, but they work in the same way. The purpose of those drugs is to force Gyeonk into the body, which explains why both brothers are able to use it. Luke also realizes neither of them knows the most important detail about those pills. That makes Park Danny furious, and he demands a direct explanation. Luke answers without hesitation. If they continue using that stuff, both of them could end up dying. Park Danny panics and starts shouting, overwhelmed by fear and anger. He still doesn't understand what Luke truly wants until he receives a clear warning. If he genuinely cares about Park Min-guk, he needs to distance himself from those corrupt people. At that exact moment, both of them feel an enormous pressure coming from the door. It is something far beyond anything they have experienced before, leaving Park Danny completely shaken. Meanwhile, several reporters wait to interview the famous star Lyra. Lyra is surprised to find Lyra in that place. She greets him politely, and he comments that she seems well. Then, without warning, he traps both of them inside a barrier. His hand closes around her neck as he demands to know how she is still alive. Park Danny immediately realizes she is in real danger, and Lyra tells her to remove the blazer. She is stunned to realize he noticed the condition of her body even after she removed Riam's energy. Lyra watches her carefully, while she cannot understand how he sees through everything so easily. Then, as if deciding she had already suffered enough, he offers to help. Instead of making her condition worse, he uses his own internal energy to heal her. Afterward, he tries to persuade her, saying he never intended to abandon her. But he is caught off guard by the terrible expression on her face because she is enduring unbearable pain. Even with her body burning from the inside, Lyra simply smiles. The reporters notice absolutely nothing because of the barrier, and the two leave the area. Later on, Park Danny keeps thinking about Luke's words. If his condition continues getting worse, it could kill him, and that explains the way he has been feeling lately. Now he begins to suspect the organization hid that truth on purpose. Even so, he still doesn't know whether he can trust Luke. When Park Minguk returns from school, Park Danny greets him while trying to protect his younger brother the best way he can. While brushing his teeth, Park Minguk jokes that Park Danny should stop staring at him with such a creepy expression. Then Park Danny suddenly announces that they can no longer use the pills, claiming the company restricted access exclusively to organization members. Park Minguk hates hearing that because he wanted the pills' power for an important evaluation. But Park Danny can no longer keep taking reckless risks without thinking. Then Park Minguk suddenly starts bleeding from the nose, revealing the terrible cost of those drugs. Park Danny panics and tells him to take better care of his health. Park Minguk doesn't understand why his brother is acting that way. To him, students get nosebleeds all the time. The story then shifts to the leader of CK Shield, who eats dinner while reviewing the company's latest version of the product. This new formula is even stronger than the previous one and produces better results. They even hired specialists to test the product. And those same experienced fighters were defeated by a man who could barely remain standing. That is how powerful the Gyeonk pills are, and the company believes their value will continue rising even further. That man is Joe Nile, the company director. Joe also takes part in the meeting. The director is impressed to see that users' bodies continue recovering while sales keep increasing. Customers want more doses because the effect appears instantly. It seems capable of revolutionizing medicine, and for now they are calling the product a vitamin injection. Everything is unfolding exactly as planned. Then the boss orders Park Danny to report what happened with the man he was supposed to eliminate. Park Danny can only remember the beating he received, so he freezes on the spot, but he cannot admit that. Because of that, he lies and says he handled the situation quietly. At least that buys him a little more time. The boss orders him to return to work while the scene shifts back to Park Minguk. Park Minguk starts getting irritated because Luke keeps appearing around him constantly. Luke acts as though everything is just coincidence. In reality, he is closely observing Park Minguk, but lately he hasn't sensed any sign of Gyeonk coming from him. Then Luke looks out the window and sees Junho beating Junho once again. He is venting all his anger on the boy because of what Luke did to him. Junho gets thrown onto the ground while hearing that this will always be his life. The lackeys merely watch while their boss keeps kicking Junho non-stop. Everything changes when Marielle appears. For a second they panic, thinking she is Luke. Then, after staring at Marielle, Junho approaches while raising his hand to slap her. Terrible idea. Luke appears instantly and stops the blow. Park Danny becomes so frightened of him that he leaves immediately without even looking back. Luke tells Marielle she was far too reckless and still doesn't understand why trouble keeps finding her. He also had to change his priorities after learning the truth about the pills. Now there are more serious matters to deal with, so he can no longer keep protecting her all the time. Even so, Luke fears something might happen while he is away. That is why he misses the old allies he trusted with his life. Marielle warns Junho to be careful because Junho and his group will take every chance they get to humiliate him. As they walk away, Luke realizes something important. Maybe he can destroy Junho completely by humiliating him beyond recovery. Because of that, he tells Junho to defeat Junho with his own hands, something that sounds practically impossible. Even so, Luke sticks to his decision and says this is the right path, since he has no allies in this era. He is willing to share his power with the only person he can trust and build a new team. Back in middle school, Junho was still the same nerdy kid as always, only slightly bigger than the other students. That was probably why the bullies never messed with him. In fact, he was usually the one intimidating other people. Then one day, a boy slapped his chubby friend and stole his handheld game console, refusing to give it back. The brat even provoked Junho in front of everyone, telling him to fight if he wanted it returned. Over the following days, Junho began preparing for the first serious fight of his life. He knew the entire school would be watching, and everything seemed calm until the fight truly started. Then he took a brutal uppercut to the chin that sent his glasses flying away. The blow shook him so badly that he could barely stay on his feet. Even so, he managed to keep his balance, but inside he had already given up. That very first punch destroyed all his confidence and made his body completely freeze. The fear hit him so hard he could barely breathe. The other kids immediately started laughing. To them, he looked like a walking joke. Even now, Junho believes that day affected him so deeply it may have even stopped him from growing taller. Back in the present, he wakes up completely confused. Dula explains that he passed out. Luke says he opened one of Junho's Hyung points. Junho asks whether that is like the techniques from the cheap martial arts manga he reads. Dula admits she doesn't really understand it either, but says that somehow Luke made him stronger. Luke simply smiles and says he now has enough strength to defeat 100 men. Junho instantly believes him and says he can feel energy flowing through his body. Later that night, Dula gets annoyed because Luke followed her all the way home, but he calmly replies that he will only leave after making sure she is safe. Then she asks where he is staying, and after learning it is far from there, she decides to walk him back. On the way, she buys him an ice cream. After only one bite, Luke is amazed by the perfect dessert he had never tasted before. While he enjoys the ice cream, she suddenly asks whether he is hiding something. The way he talks and everything about Shiong makes it seem like he came from another era. She almost uncovers the truth. But before she can continue, an older woman yells that girls should not be walking around so late at night. Luke immediately turns around, and the woman nearly has a heart attack when she realizes he is a man. Annoyed, she calls him ugly for having long hair. Luke ignores the insult and senses something strange inside her bag. Then he politely asks to see the bag, which only makes him look even more suspicious. The woman panics and starts screaming for help. Dula rushes between them before the situation gets worse. Before she can explain anything, the woman grabs the bag and runs away as if she were hiding something. Dula asks why he frightened the woman like that. Quietly, he answers that she was carrying something dangerous. After looking at the drug hidden behind him, Luke is shocked by how widespread it has already become. Meanwhile, Junho sits in his room, wondering whether he can truly face the bullies now. Then he measures his own height, which has not changed since he was 8 years old. After realizing he is still the same, Junho convinces himself that he cannot win. Deep down, he is still that frightened child. The next morning, Dula is surprised to see Luke arriving early at school. What catches her attention the most is his new haircut, and she laughs while asking if he changed it because of their conversation the night before. He replies, "No, it's just getting hot." Then he comments on how clean the other classrooms look before the students arrive. Dula realizes he is actually checking whether Junho will show up as promised. Luke explains that he cannot be seen if he wants to test Junho's courage, and he is also preventing Dula from interfering. So the two silently watch while Junho removes his shoe. He orders a new chubby student to crawl over and pick up the shoe with his mouth like a dog. The entire class simply watches, too terrified to react, because Junho rules the school whenever Luke is not around. Luke asks Dula whether she thinks Junho will really fight back. She answers that even though she trusts him, courage does not appear overnight. At that moment, Junho storms angrily into the classroom. After seeing Junho humiliating the boy just to return his phone, Junho grabs the shoe and throws it across the room, hitting Junho directly in the face. Then he tells the bully to hand over the phone like a good little boy. Junho is shocked to see that skinny nerd finally fighting back. One of the lackeys steps forward and asks whether he thinks Luke is going to save him or if he has completely lost his mind. Even while trembling all over, Junho declares that he came to end Junho's reign. And even though he has not grown in 11 years, he is no longer the coward he used to be. Dula cannot believe that timid Junho finally found the courage to stand up to someone. When she asks if he can really defeat anyone the way Luke promised, he casually says no. Junho's Xiong still has not fully awakened. Meanwhile, Junho charges in to face his first opponent, Kim. Both of them throw their strongest punch at the same time, and the entire room falls silent when Junho gets knocked down by a heavy hook. Kim admits that the nerd almost landed his hit first, but since he is already used to fighting, he dodged easily and landed a clean shot to Junho's liver. Right after that comes a straight punch to the face, leaving Junho unable to understand why he alone is getting destroyed. Even Kim's friend asks him to take it easy before he seriously hurts the boy, but Kim keeps kicking and punching Junho without stopping. That is when Junho realizes he had been afraid the entire time. While Kim stares at him with contempt and prepares to finish things once and for all, Dula begins to panic. She demands to know why Luke lied about making Junho stronger when he is obviously still weak. Luke remains calm and says, "Fear and courage are opposites, but both begin the same way, by believing in yourself." At that moment, Junho finally reaches his limit and awakens his true strength, turning fear into courage. He launches himself forward and smashes his head into the big guy's chin, knocking him down instantly. The entire classroom is stunned by that sudden burst of strength, but Park Minguk quickly comments that it was more luck than skill. The attack simply hit the perfect spot on the chin. Even so, Junho calls for the next person to come get beaten too, but Junho responds with a brutal kick straight to his face. After that, Junho orders one of the lackeys to take out the trash. To everyone's surprise, Junho slowly gets back up, ready to keep fighting. Without caring about his own body, he rushes straight at the school bully and takes a heavy knee to the chest. Junho throws him against the lockers and starts punching his face like a punching bag. While beating him, he asks whether his brain stopped growing along with his height and whether he forgot what happened back in middle school. The class watches in shock as Junho continues beating and humiliating him, determined to make sure he never stands up again. Then Luke appears and stops the assault. He warns that Junho is still not someone Junho can defeat. But Junho rises with a smile and asks whether all that talk about Xiong was a lie. Every hit hurts unbearably, but it is through that pain that he finally begins to understand something about himself. Then he tells Luke not to interfere. That fight belongs to him alone. Taking his stance once again, he makes it clear that he is not finished yet. Hearing that, Luke smiles proudly and pats him on the shoulder. While Junho still struggles to understand whether Junho is really challenging him again, a punch crashes directly into his face. Junho dodges the counterattack and quickly thinks about his next move, but Junho calls him an idiot for dropping his guard and drives a knee into him, nearly leaving him unable to stand. As Junho struggles to remain conscious, Junho keeps attacking and knocks him to the floor again with a kick. Seeing the boy rise once more, Junho admits he is impressed by his stubbornness. That is when Junho realizes the strength Luke gave him allows him to endure blow after blow. But he also understands that endurance alone means nothing if he cannot strike back. Junho charges in to finish him once and for all, calling him a pathetic nerd who will never change. At that moment, Junho wants to fight like the heroes he admires and performs a move taken directly from one of his favorite comics. Luke and Dula watch in complete confusion as he strikes an exaggerated pose, ready to end what started 10 years earlier. Junho yells that the nerd broke his nose, but right after that he starts getting pummeled by attacks that look straight out of an action series. To finish it off, Junho grabs Junho by the head and slams him into the ground. The entire class stands frozen, unable to believe he actually defeated the strongest fighter in the school, and for the first time Junho understands that strength had always existed inside him. All he lacked was faith in himself. Afterward, Junho climbs up to the rooftop while still holding his injured face. He looks around searching for whoever called him there. Then a voice from above interrupts his thoughts. When he lifts his head, he sees Luke and immediately calls him Master. Luke asks why, completely confused. But Junho answers that it simply feels right, and decides right there that he will follow him. Luke jumps down to the ground and starts circling around him, examining every detail. He comments that what Junho used earlier resembled Jiank, but now he believes it was something different. Junho explains that he merely copied a move from a cheap manhua. Luke jokes that it is basically the modern equivalent of the old martial arts novels. Junho asks whether the master only gave him that strength temporarily because he can already feel the power fading away. After seeing his disappointed expression, Luke asks why he looks so depressed after defeating the bully. He should be happy, but Junho admits he wants that strength forever. Luke replies that it can happen, as long as he helps him. Junho's eyes widen instantly. He can barely believe what he just heard. Meanwhile, Luke knows he is improvising because that kind of power should not even exist in that form. Even so, Junho accepts immediately and proudly declares that this is the duty of a disciple. Without saying anything else, the supposed master jumps off the rooftop and tells him to follow. Junho replies, "There's no way I can do that." Then he runs toward the stairs, already convinced that this training will be hell. The next morning, Park Danny prepares breakfast and shouts for his brother to wake up. Park Minguk does not respond at all. Annoyed, Park Danny grumbles that he is basically raising a child, then yanks away the blanket and freezes in shock. Desperate, he immediately calls Luke, explaining the entire situation and saying he will cooperate with anything he asks. Park Minguk now bears the same cursed marks as Lyra. His condition is so severe that he cannot even wake up. His entire body is drenched in sweat. With no one else to turn to, Park Danny begs for help and says Park Minguk is the only family he has left. Luke gives him a number to call and promises to do everything he can. While speaking on the phone, Luke cuts his own hair, deciding that long hair no longer suits this era. After the call ends, Junho, the doctor from CK Shield, receives a call from President Young. Junho explains that things went wrong while dealing with Marielle, and Young asks whether it is the same girl he mentioned to his daughter. At that moment, the president's daughter tells him to get back to the golf game. Even so, he stays on the call while taking his swing, and the doctor discovers that Park Danny lied when he claimed he had already handled the girl's problem. Because of that, Young decides to personally take care of the situation this time. Soon afterward, the red-haired man reports that the new batch containing 100,000 ampules is ready and has already started being distributed. He explains that the ampules create extreme addiction, which is why they spread so quickly. The objective now is to distribute them across the entire world. Meanwhile, Park Danny arrives at Young Gym. He senses a presence nearby and starts looking around, but Lyra suddenly appears and nearly scares him to death. Startled, Park Danny asks if she was the one Luke called, and whether she can really help. Lyra responds by turning serious and releasing her chi. She warns him not to test her unless he wants to end up running around naked. Park Danny freezes instantly. Even she can use Xiank, and now he begins questioning who these people truly are. Junho grabs his collar to inspect the cursed mark, but stops after sensing something strangely familiar. Park Danny quickly pushes her hand away. Then he asks when Luke will arrive, since he said he needed to finish something first. At that moment, Luke walks into the place and lowers his hood. Both Park Danny and Lyra stare at him, shocked by his new haircut. Luke says he was cutting his hair and asks whether he finally looks normal enough to fit into this era. Junho asks why he decided to cut it so short, while Park Danny explodes in frustration because he is wasting time on his hair while his brother is suffering. Luke replies that he once believed he had no place in this generation, but now he understands that if he wants to face people like Lyra in the present, he first needs to understand this world. Then he warns them that a dangerous substance is about to spread everywhere and that he needs both of their help to stop it. Before leaving, Luke asks Lyra why she came back. She looks surprised and asks whether he met her somewhere before. Luke calmly answers that he simply sensed her energy. As always, Park Danny interrupts by asking whether he knows whose energy that was, but Luke ignores him and tells them both to move. Park Danny says that right now the only thing he cares about is saving his brother. Then Luke surprises him by revealing that he already examined Park Minguk. From what he saw, it may already be too late to save him. He also explains that something different was mixed into the original curse. Park Danny asks whether another type of ampule caused that, and Luke replies that they need to discover exactly what exists inside the new formula before it is too late. Finally, Park Danny admits he heard rumors about a new ampule being mass-produced. The effects are stronger, but the risks increase drastically. He asks whether finding it could save Park Minguk, and Luke realizes he has started doubting him, so he states that no hospital in the world could save his brother. To ease his fear, Luke touches the cursed mark, and the deformed skin instantly returns to normal. Park Danny thanks him, now convinced that his brother can still be saved, and the three of them sit down to form a plan. Lyra asks whether Luke knows where to find the new ampule. He answers that this kind of information is difficult to trace, and that only the scattered shipments leave behind any trail. When Lyra suggests directly attacking the organization's leaders, Luke pulls an ampule from his pocket and says the real objective is to destroy that. He explains that the leaders may only be subordinates serving someone even greater. Park Danny agrees that it is still too early for a direct attack and says he will try to gather information by infiltrating from the inside. Lyra clearly dislikes the idea. Then Park Danny reveals there is still something important he has not told them. What he reveals is so absurd that even Luke is shocked and struggles to believe it. The following day, the teacher becomes irritated after noticing the class did not give the usual morning greeting and asks where the class representative is. One of the students replies that the class president is absent. That surprises everyone since Park Min-guk never misses school. Junho is absent as well, and Junho comments that maybe he is too embarrassed to show up after what happened yesterday. Later, on the rooftop, Dula storms in angrily and asks whether Luke is hiding something about Park Min-guk because he never stays home. Not even when he is sick. Luke calmly replies that he does not know anything, but she calls him a liar. Then he asks whether she is worried and says that Park Min-guk will return sooner than she thinks. The last time Luke examined Park Min-guk, he used Junka to stabilize his condition. That stopped it from getting worse, but it was not enough to wake him up, and Luke knew he could remain asleep for months. Because of that, when Luke says Park Min-guk will return soon, Junho begins to grow suspicious and tries to force answers out of him. At that moment, Luke senses someone approaching and quickly covers her mouth, warning that someone is coming. The door opens, and Sian walks in looking for Mariel. Mariel tells Luke to relax because she already told Sian everything. He instantly becomes tense and asks exactly what she told her. Mariel hugs Sian and says the two of them are best friends, so of course she shared it with her. After that, she gently pushes Sian forward and tells her to greet Luke properly, since it was the first time the two had truly met like that. Sian starts blushing, and when Luke approaches to speak with her, the story returns to the moment Park Danny revealed that shocking information. He explained that his boss's real targets were Luke and Dula, although Park Danny himself had been marked first and tried to stop it by sending a false report. Luke asks who his boss truly is and whether Park Danny also became a target of the organization. Park Danny answers that he is not sure, but that the boss owed someone favors and could not refuse, even if it put people in danger. He knows how terrible that sounds. Back in the present, Luke walks closer to Sian and whispers something into her ear. Immediately she goes from shy to completely shocked, and Park Danny demands to know what he said. But instead of answering, Sian runs away as though her life depends on it. Right after that, Unai appears. Luke immediately asks whether she discovered anything about the boss Park Danny mentioned. He wants to know whether the man's surname is Choi. When Lyra confirms it, she is surprised to realize he already knew. Luke's expression hardens instantly. Then Lyra asks whether he remembers Young from the old days. Luke nods and says he knows that beast very well. Young served Lyra back when he was still Okan. Lyra continues the report and reveals that the very same creature is now a president named Young in this era. The scene shifts to Young himself, relaxing while his stomach growls as he shouts at his men to bring food before he loses his patience. On the way home, Mariel can no longer hold back and asks Luke what he said to Soon to make her run off like that. He replies that she probably would not believe him, but she insists. So he finally reveals that all the bullying she suffered happened because of Soon. Park Danny is left speechless. At first she questions it, but little by little she realizes he is right, and the truth hits her hard. She walks ahead by herself, too shaken to hide what she feels, and says she will continue on alone from now on. Park Danny remembers when she was sitting alone on the school stairs. That was the moment Seun called her name for the first time and asked if they could be friends. Dula warned that there was nothing to gain from getting close to her, but Seun answered that she only wanted both of them to be happy. Back then, it sounded completely genuine. As the memories return, Dula relives the little moments they shared together, eating lunch side by side, shopping for clothes, and singing excitedly at karaoke. Then Seun returns to reality and realizes how far she drifted from what they once had. While Lyra walks up the stairs, she remembers Luke saying how much he hated Dula, so she feels ashamed and covers part of her face with her hand. She wonders how her life became such a mess, and silently curses all of them. Somewhere else, Junho and Young discuss their next move. Their conversation is interrupted by Jong Wes. Young asks Junho to leave them alone for a moment and apologizes to his daughter for what happened. He tells her not to worry. Junho is handling everything, and in the end things will work out fine. Back at the hideout, Park Danny says they do not have much time because the new drug has probably already begun circulating. Since his team never received orders to oversee the deliveries, he concludes that someone has started suspecting them. Even so, he says they can still get their hands on the pills. Not every Park Danny relies on middlemen. Some deals happen secretly, like drug sales on the streets. Lyra looks confused, so Luke asks how those illegal sales operate. Park Danny explains that they usually use SNS and Telegram. When the two stare at him without understanding anything, he explains that Telegram is a phone app, yet they still look completely lost. That makes Park Danny lose his patience, and Lyra tells him to start explaining from the beginning. Instead, he says they need someone who actually understands that kind of thing, and Luke immediately knows who he means. A dealer posts in a Telegram group about a new pill and calls it a vitamin injection. Lyra quickly replies that he wants to buy it, and the dealer tells him to wait at the final stop of the X line. Then Lyra sits quietly, repeating to himself that his only role is to make sure the deal happens safely. He remembers Luke saying he would appear after the exchange, but he still feels uneasy because those people are dangerous. The closer the moment gets, the more nervous he becomes. Then when the train approaches the last station, he suddenly feels the urge to use the bathroom. Alone inside the train car, Junho waits and starts wondering where the dealer is. The door suddenly opens, and one of the henchmen steps inside, telling him to come closer. Thinking that man is the seller, Junho notices that he cannot even look directly at him. Trying to stay calm, he walks over to hand him the money. But the thug backs away at the last second to answer a phone call. Junho panics when he hears the man say the deal was cancelled because the director gave the order. That single sentence makes his stomach turn cold. Right away, he realizes something is wrong. The henchman signals for him to come closer. Junho's heart races as he wonders where his master is. Then he takes off running, trying to buy time and survive. But the moment he enters the next train car, despair takes over. Another man is standing there, blocking the path, and now he is trapped. Then a familiar voice breaks the silence, and Junho freezes. It is Park Danny, calmly saying that he is on his side. If you made it this far, leave a like and a comment. Comment, Frozen Protagonist. The more comments you leave, the faster I'll bring the continuation. I'll also recommend 2 more videos from the channel that I know you'll enjoy. So I'll see you there. That's all for now, guys. Thanks for watching, and see you later, everyone.